Hi there, Scott Smith here with SimpleECM. I've shown you a couple short videos on how to use SimpleECM APIs, but I actually wanted to show a more in-depth example of actually building a fully functional application using SimpleECM. So here's a little web page I put together. Basically it has a few little inputs. And then it lets you select a file. Select this PDF file, and then you can select what format you want to convert it to. I'm going to select an Excel spreadsheet, and when I click submit, it'll upload that and then give me a little message saying thank you for trying SimpleECM. We'll email you the converted file. So here's the file I emailed in. As you can see, it's a PDF. And when I actually get an email back, it's a slick little HTML email, and it has a link in there to download my converted file. I click that link, I'll get an Excel file that looks very much like my original file, but is in an Excel format. It's fully editable and much more usable than a PDF. So how did I actually create that application? Well, part of it's actually included right there on the page. I showed an example of the single API call I made to convert that file. So I'll show you a little bit more about how that works. So basically the page itself is just, like I said, a set of inputs, a select menu, some JavaScript validation, but basically it's just submitting all that data to a little servlet I've got running in the background. So that servlet is basically just doing two very simple things. First, it's calling this handle input function, which just does a get part on each part of the request, the first name, last name, and email, and stores them to this class I've created, params_rec. And it's using a write to write the file to another part of that class. Then the next thing it does is it calls this call OCR to email function, and what that does is first it builds a string that I'm gonna make my callback URL. That's the string where I'm receiving a request back from the SimpleECM system after it's done converting my file. And you can see I'm adding some of the parameters in there as URL parameters. Next, it's loading that callback URL along with two other parameters, language and the file itself. It's loading those into the multi-part body of an HTTP post. And then it's making that post. You can see it's getting an instant response. It's getting the status from that JSON response, and it's loading message back to the user based on that status. Now, one thing you might notice is the URL to which it's making this post is just a static URL with a /conversions endpoint, and then / depending on what type of output file the user selected. The reason I'm able to do that is because you'll notice that SimpleECM actually has a few APIs, a few different endpoints for MS Excel, MS PowerPoint, MS Word, and searchable PDF, but they all have exactly the same format. Language, callback, and file are the only parameters, and it relies on header authentication. So you can see all of those have the same exact format of call. So that enables me to make one simple API call for all four different types of conversions. And then I've got a second servlet that's actually watching this URL that I put in there. and all it's doing is getting the URL parameters so that it knows who to send an email to, and then it's calling a function that I've gotten here, send OCR email, and it's sending an email to that person with that retrieval URL. Now obviously there's a couple other details behind the scenes here, like I'm using JSON to interpret the JSON calls back from SimpleECM, and I've got my mailer, my send OCR email function sitting in a separate mailer file that's calling our email servers. But both of those are sort of fairly trivial details, and most of what needs to be done to set up an app like this I've shown you in the past 5 minutes. So you can start to get a sense of how easy it can be to develop apps with SimpleECM. Thanks so much, and feel free to try out that file conversion API demo yourself on SimpleECM.com.